Yeah. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Rail, Tattooed Nurse coming at ya. Tonight we're going over chapter 21, Maternity. What the hell's the name of the book? It's Leifer, 6th edition. 6th edition. Edition, excuse me, edition. Introduction to Maternity and Pediatric Nursing. Let me just get this music a little bit lower. Oh, that's too low. There we go. Right there. That's perfect. That's perfect. So here we go with the child's experience of hospitalization. And before we get into it, I think it kind of goes without saying at this point. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, hospitalization was a little bit different than it is now. It was either you're inpatient or you're home, and that was it. And now with the advent of internet technology and all kinds of stuff like that, we've basically got great billing friendly things like inpatient and home care at the same time. It's kind of weird, it's fucked up, kind of is what it is. But the bottom line is we're talking about the child's experience of hospitalization at this point. So we're going to get right into preparing the child for treatments or procedures in the hospital, because that's basically where procedures would be happening. And procedures could be anything from I don't know, a kidney transplant or a heart transplant to just a shot in the arm. So we're going to start out with infants. Rule number 1 with infants and preparing the infant for childcare for procedures is involve the parents. Involve the parents. Involve the parents. Always involve the parents. You want to include familiar objects. If the kid has a favorite blanket, maybe a teddy bear, a favorite toy that they like to play with, their little Buzz Lightyear, you know, to infinity and beyond. You want to have that involved, and that's going to help them increase their comfort zone. You want to soothe them and distract them, and that kind of goes along with including familiar objects. So we move on to toddlers and preschoolers. Involve the parents. Involve the parents. Involve the parents. Always involve the parents. That's basically what you want to know. You want to offer simple explanations. Basically, you don't go into medical terms. You're not going to say, we're going to... shit, I don't even know. At this point, really? How do I have to... You'll offer simple explanations. I'm going to read your temperature. I'm going to read your temperature. I'm not going to take your temperature, because at that age, they're small, and anything that you're going to take, they think they're like aborigines, and you know, if I take your picture and I take your soul. No, I'm gonna read your temperature, little things like that. So that's kind of how that goes. Simple explanations. You want to keep that. You want to give permission to express discomfort. Basically, you want to let them know that it's okay if you want to cry, because at that point, even in toddlers and preschoolers, you're looking at that age where they want to cry and they're kind of looking at mommy and daddy, and then it's okay, let it out, it's all right. Nothing bad is going to happen to you here. It's okay, you can let it happen, let it out. You want to offer one direction at a time. You don't want to say, you know, take off your shirt and then put on this robe, then I'm going to take your blood pressure, then I'm going to take your temperature. You just one at a time. Okay, go ahead and get undressed, blah blah blah. We got that, right? Simple. You want to use distractions. Again, that kind of goes with familiar objects with the infants. And you want to hug after treatments or procedures. And you want to make sure that you maintain knowledge. What the hell is it? Culture. You want to maintain cultural awareness at this point, because you don't want to, you know, if you're looking at a little kid who's Asian, maybe, you don't want to be running up and, oh, it's okay, I'm going to hug you, and blah, 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 blah. No, because they don't like space invaders, and you don't want to be the space invader. So you want to just kind of make sure that you offer the encouragement and you have the parents offer the reward, if possible. And you can offer the reward because that is therapeutic, but you have to make sure that you maintain your professional boundaries. Professional. I want to be professional. Maybe clean shaven, not wearing a baseball hat, you know, shit like that. You know. So then we move into the school-age child. All of the above. All of the above. Involve the parents. Involve the parents. Involve the parents. Involve the parents. I'm a parent. I want to know. Want to know what the fuck's going on. Just saying. So, with the school-age child, they're curious. They're a little bit older. They want to know what's what. They see all this shit sitting around the room. Excuse me, I'm smoking. I know it's terrible, nursing. They see all this stuff sitting around the room. Let them experiment with it. Let them pick it up. Let them play with it. Let them play with the blood pressure cuff. Let them squeeze it up and see what the needle does. Yada yada. Put the earphones in. Listen to their own heart. That kind of stuff. Let them play with the equipment. It gets them more comfortable with it. You want to offer small rewards. I'm not saying, give the kid $50. Yeah, you let me take your blood pressure. It's cool. Here's $50. No. Small rewards, little stickers, kind of stuff like that. Goes along with the school-age child. Adolescents. We all know how adolescents work. It's a little bit different, especially parents out there going through nursing school. Holy shit. Everybody knows what an adolescent does and how they are. So, with an adolescent, you want to provide privacy, because that's a big thing. Because I don't know if you remember when you were a teenager, but I remember when I was a teenager, I wanted privacy. I wanted independence. I wanted to be my own man. I was out there. I was ready to take on the world, but I needed my privacy, because I still need my privacy, but whatever. All right, that's cool. But you want to involve the adolescent in the treatment procedure. You want to let them know what's going on. You want to educate them. And you don't want to talk to them dumb. You don't want to talk to them... you don't want to talk to them dumb. You don't want to talk to them like they can't understand. Because if you don't have kids, you have a lesson coming if you ever actually have your own kids. In dealing with how perceptive teenage kids can be. So you want to involve them in the treatment and procedure. Explain the procedure and the equipment. Show them. Dude, don't be shy about it. You're talking about, again, this is that generation where they want to be, I'm here. I'm a man. I'm a woman. Look at me. I'm independent. Teenagers, adolescents, they want their independence, and they want to be treated as equals, even though we all know they're just annoying young adults, and that's how they are. But, it is what it is. So, let them examine everything, explain everything that's going on, and suggest coping techniques. The biggest thing you ever have to deal with an adolescent, with a teenager is, dude, you don't know how to cope yet, because you are just sitting back taking depressive pictures, and you're just, I'm emo, I'm goth, I'm so emotional, the world doesn't understand me. Just sit back, let them do their thing, but, hey, take a breath, dude. It's cool, I'm 40 years old, and if I'm dealing with a teenage patient, and if it's a guy, I'm gonna be like, yo, dude, just chillax, relax. It's cool. It's all good. If it's a girl, hey, just relax. It's okay. You're good. That's kind of how you just. Wow, I really sound like a fucked up gay ass parent. Just be like, dude, you gotta relate to them. You gotta relate to them, and you just gotta be like, yo, dude, just call him dude, and it's cool. All right. Obviously, they're never gonna understand that, but you gotta make that effort. You gotta make that attempt. You gotta relate to the teenagers, the adolescents. You gotta make them feel comfortable. You gotta offer them coping devices, because they still don't really know coping devices at this point. At this point, it's Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat or Ball Chat or whatever it is that they all do at this point. So we're going back into the child's reaction to hospitalization. Again, children can't grasp what's going to happen to them, even though they've been prepared. And that even goes on into the late teenage years, to the adolescent years. You can tell them what's going to happen to them all day long, but you know what? The bottom line is, once they get into that room and they look around and they see, oh my God, there's all this equipment around. There's needles. There's a lot of rubber gloves, and there's a tattooed freak wearing a baseball cap, and he's looking at me like he wants something from me, and I just want your vitals. That's cool, but they don't know how to deal with it, so you just gotta kind of deal with that. So, going back to nursing tips, familiar rituals and routines must be incorporated into the plan of care for a hospitalized child. The younger the child, the more you have to be regimented with the familiar. Infants and toddlers, they're going to go through separation anxiety. And the first stage of that separation anxiety is protest. That's no, mommy, you can't leave, daddy, you can't leave, no. And then mommy and daddy leave. And then it's despair. Ah! And then they're freaking out and they're crying and tears are flowing. And you're just like, dude, it's okay. They left, but I'm here. It's all good. And you just can't, they're in fucking consolable. But that's a natural stage for what they're going through with separation anxiety. And then eventually they just kind of, they dry up, they run out of tears, and they get into despair and detachment, and they're just like, mommy's not going to be back. Okay, go ahead, do what you have to do. It's fine. Whatever. And that's what happens. And then you get into the actual procedure that you may have to do, whether it be giving an immunization or just taking vitals or something like that. The parent's not there. And the kid just kind of deals with it as they deal with it. But then you move into pain, because sometimes medical procedures cause pain. You can't avoid that shit. You're talking about people in lab coats with stethoscopes and all kinds of weird equipment, saying all kinds of fancy words, and you're just a little kid, and you're just like, ah. And shit hurts. Shit hurts. There's no way to get around that. The one thing that you and I have to remember as nurses is that pain is all about what the patient says pain is. It doesn't matter if that patient is a year old, 13 years old, 30 years old, or 93 years old. Whatever the patient expresses as pain, that's pain to them. And that's how it goes. And you are not the expert on somebody else's pain. You have no right to say what somebody else's pain is. And you have no right to question what somebody else's pain is. Whether or not you think you know that pain is not valid, what that pain is to them is what that pain is to them. Oh, look at that fancy camera shot. I'm going back. It's kind of uncomfortable this way. I don't like looking to the left. There you go. You're back. All right. So we know that pain is the fifth vital sign. It's important. And what the patient says the pain is, that's what the patient says the pain is. Right? Okay. So now, pain indicators for communicatively impaired children, PICIC. It's been developed and includes the observations rated on a 4-point PCIC. How was that? PCIC 4 points. 4 letters, 5 letters. Fuck, I suck at this. PCIC 4 points. Okay? 4-point scale that includes the following: crying, whether it's with or without tears; screaming or groaning; distressed facial expression; tense body; and irritability to touch. Okay? So any of these, those are points on that 4-point scale. So that's your PCIC. So then you have your FLAC scale, which is more of a commonly used scale when it comes to kids, and it's especially in nonverbal children. Okay? Every section of this is 0 to 2, and there's 5 sections. So you can have the highest being a 10, the lowest being a 0, and that's where your pain would go. So the first one would be the face. The face is neutral. Obviously, it's a 0. If it's a grimace, if it's a... that's a 2. Okay? Your legs. If the legs are not moving, yeah, it's cool. If the legs twitch a little bit, like one quick, that's a 1. If the legs are just nonstop, that's a 2. So we move on, and we have activity. If they're quiet, they're chill. Obviously, a 0. If the back is arching, and they're just... got a 2. So we go on through that. We have cry with your moan and the scream, or nothing. You have your consolability, which is touch. You're consolable. It's okay. You're cool. You're good. And they relax. Obviously, that's a 0. If you go into their inconsolable, that's a 2. So that all of that stuff can bring you up anywhere between 0 and 10. And all the factors relating to pain should be considered. So you have different pain. What the hell's the word I'm looking for? I suck at this. I'm so sorry. There's different ways to deal with pain, and the biggest way is obviously, as a nurse, you want to go with the least invasive first, right? Least invasive would be non-pharmacologic. This is basically just talking to the patient, and this patient would be whether it be a kid or a teenager or a 95-year-old. You want to go with least invasive first, so you're looking at focusing. Focus the patient away from the pain, get the patient to talk about something that distracts them, get the patient to draw something. Little kids, you want to have them color something, that kind of stuff. In older patients, you can have the stop technique, it's called, which is basically they can actually, when they feel pain, they can just stop, and they're just yelling at the pain, just stop it, get out of here, pain, I don't like you, stop it, stop pain. I know I'm a terrible smoking nurse. So we go on into the faces pain rating scale. Basically, again, 1 to 5. You have 0 to 5. I suck. Holy cow. 1. If you go from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 in a pain rating scale, you suck just like I sucked just then. Just then. That's how I sucked. It's always 0. You always start from 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 because you can't automatically assume that a patient is in pain. So it's always 0. 0 pain is nothing. 5 on a 0 to 5, that's the worst possible. It sucks. It's the worst possible pain ever. 10, just as sucky. It's just got a decimal in a different spot. That's how it works. You can have descriptive word scale. Basically, 0 is no pain, 1 is mild, 2 is moderate, 3 is quite a lot. That's right around about just quite a lot of pain. Quite a lot of pain. So it'd be a 3 or a 6 if you're going 0 to 10. Then you've got very bad, which is 4, and 5 is the worst. 5 is a 10. It's just, this sucks and I can't deal with it. And when it comes to pain, you're going to deal with, you can give for mild to moderate pain, say like a 0 to 3 for kids, or a 0 to 6 for adults, you could give acetaminophen. It's commonly used mild pain reliever. And you go into NSAIDs, you can also help with those. Opioids are for bigger pain. Like it sucks. Like your tears, it doesn't matter how old you are. There's at this point, tears are flowing. This sucks. I don't like it. So that's moderate to severe pain for the opioids. And then when you're going into procedures and you gotta basically just sedate, you've got fentanyl. It's a potent analgesic, even for a short time for surgical procedures. It's got a rapid onset with a short duration of action. And that's kind of how the fentanyl works. So then you go into post-care. You've got your patient-controlled analgesia, which is PCA, which is basically more morphine. Not that any 7-year-old is going to know what morphine is, but the button makes it feel more gooder. It's okay, I'm good now. Okay. Now, the PCA is set up so that the patient cannot just automatically and overdose themselves, because that'd be really bad for business, if you could let them OD themselves. So it's actually set up with a preset on how much you can give yourself, when you can give yourself. If you're, no matter how PRN it is, if you're not ready for the next dose, you're not ready for the next dose. And that's kind of, how that's going to go. So hang on a second. Got to take a break. All right, I'm back. Sorry, where the hell were we? Oh yeah, patient-controlled analgesia. So we don't want the patient to go and knock themselves right off the stratosphere. So it's actually controlled. It's semi-controlled. There's the thing that you deal with PCA is you're going to deal with a lot of patients going, dude, I'm hitting the fucking button and it still hurts. I'm sorry. I can only allow so much per hour, per 2 hours, Q4H, that kind of thing. That's just kind of how it happens. Then you get into conscious sedation, which is, it kind of backtracks into procedures. I don't know why the book hops around, like, you know, it does. So you get into conscious sedation. Conscious sedation is basically you're using IV drugs, and it's when you impair consciousness, but you retain protective reflexes. So basically, conscious sedation is, and that's vocabulary word, conscious sedation. Conscious sedation is when you dope somebody the fuck up. Conscious sedation dopes you up, but you're too retarded to hit the doctor. That's how conscious sedation works. So you have fear. God, this book hops around. Holy shit. So you have fear. Fear is a big thing, especially when it comes to intrusive procedures. Any intrusive procedure is going to be fear-provoking. It's going to disrupt the trust level, especially the younger the child, the more the trust is going to be broken when it comes to invasive procedures. And that's why you kind of got to be upfront on a language that they understand. But you have to be upfront. That's the key. You can't. Nurses don't give false reassurance. Nurses don't give false reassurance. Be upfront. Be upfront on the level the patient understands. Got it? Got it. Okay, good. Trust level is threatened, the self-esteem level is threatened, and self-control, that's the biggest thing. And that doesn't matter how old you are as a patient. You could be 3, 13, 30, 93, it doesn't matter. When your self-control is lost and you have to trust a stranger with your self-control, that's a big fear factor. So that kind of, you know, that's something that you as a nurse have to remember where you've ever been when you had to trust somebody else in your care. So, you know. And you have to respect the modesty, the integrity, and the privacy of each patient. Whether they're a child or an adult, you have to respect those. Now you have to remember, in children, you're going to deal with regression. If you have a toddler who's already potty trained, who's already well spoken, he's got a good vocabulary, he communicates well, she communicates well, you're going to have that toddler come in and you're going to scare the shit out of that toddler, and they're going to be pooping pants. They're going to be wetting beds. They're not going to talk. They're just going to grunt. They're going to make eye contact, or they're not going to make eye contact. They're going to regress. They're going to go back to when it was a better time that you, as the scary medical person, was not involved in their life. It's called regression. Regression can be minimized by accurate nursing assessment of the child's abilities and planning of care to support and maintain growth and development. And that's the thing. You have to remember, reward, communicate on the level, and reward. Build that trust, build that camaraderie. Doesn't matter how big the age difference is, you have to build that you have to build that camaraderie. Cultural responses are going to be a little bit different. You have to also pay attention to, you know, if you have an Asian child that's coming in, you can't make that kind of eye contact that you could make with an American child. You can't be that space invader. You can't. There are certain things that you have to pay attention to for cultural responses. And you can find that earlier on in the book. Personal space kind of goes along with cultural responses. Americans we're big, we're large, we're in charge, we're in your face. That's it. But when you're a little young patient and you're a child and a toddler, it's kind of scary and intimidating, so don't do that. Smiling is another thing you have to remember. Cultural. Russians do not take smiling as something that's good when you're in a hospital, because my kid is in a hospital for dialysis, and if you're smiling, that's fucked up, because this is a serious situation and you need to take it seriously. Smile, comrade. Don't smile at me. This is serious. Yes. So you got to focus on what's important in the culture that you're dealing with. Now you have to deal with the parents' reactions as well, because again, Involve the parent, involve the parent, involve the parent. Parents can believe that they're to blame for what's going on with the kid, whether they could or not be involved with what actually caused it. Parents are always going to be blamed. Parents are always going to blame themselves. They're always going to feel guilty. If a kid was outside playing with his friends or her friends and fell out of a tree, because that's what little boys do at 6 years old, they climb trees and and a kid fell and broke his leg, parents going to feel like shit. They're going to blame themselves. So you have to cater to that, and you have to understand that you as a nurse, whether you feel that the parent was at fault or not, that's not part of the equation. You as a nurse are there to deal with the situation. You don't judge. Nurses don't judge. But we notate the shit out of everything. But nurses don't judge. And nurses don't make the parents feel like they're being judged. Okay? You must remain objective and empathetic. Always remain objective and empathetic. You could say things to a parent like, it's understandable that you feel this way. Everything happens so fast. But you don't want to say to the parents, why weren't you watching the kid? You as a human being may want to go, why weren't you watching your fucking kid, dude? That's fucked up. He was outside, he was playing with a BB gun, and he shot himself in the face. And you can't do that. You've got to maintain objectivity. And the one thing you got to remember is when there's a kid involved, any hospital visit is a family event, especially with the age of the child involved. If it's the youngest child, if it's the youngest grandchild, if it's the youngest baby in the family, it involves everybody. The parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. You got to remember, it's always a family event. And you got to involve the family. Involve the family, involve the family, involve the family. Get that military chop going. Involve the family, motherfucker. Just involve the family. So now, going on with involving the family. Rooming in, not a bad idea. And rooming in is basically when you set the room up, you set up the patient, the child's room. You set that up so that the parent can stay there overnight. So that if that child, especially if it's a younger child going through separation anxiety, mommy's in and out while I'm going through all this torture. If the parent's there when the child wakes up in the middle of the night, guess what? That's comfort for the child, patient comfort. Parents are going to be stressed out about this kind of stuff. They may ventilate their feelings and stresses through anger, crying, or body language. The biggest thing is I'm a parent, so if I'm dealing with something, especially again going back to parents feel guilty. If I go to the hospital because my kid broke a leg or broke an arm or something like that, because she was doing something that, even though it's a kid thing, even though it was nothing I could control, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be pissed off, and I'm going to feel like I should have had control. I should have been there. I should have been the parent. So parents get pissed off. They get angry. So you got to remember, when a child is admitted to the hospital, every family member is affected. It's always a family event. In a greater, perfect world, every child would be prepared for hospitalization. Ideally, the parents should tour the facility first. Real world doesn't always happen. Real world never happens, because the only time parents take a kid to the hospital is when something is fucked up, something's wrong, something's broken. So that never happens. So the thing you have to do is involve the parent, involve the parent, involve the parent, involve the parents. And parents should always try to be as matter of fact as possible with the kid, because the parent is the two people that the kid trusts. So make sure that you involve the parent so that the parent can be as matter of fact and educational to the kid as possible, because the parent's going to be the middleman. It's just the way it works. You know what? I'm a parent. You can tell me everything you want, but I'm going to be the one that tells my kid how it goes. That's just how it goes. It's in our nature. So when children are hospitalized, the nurse should be aware of that relationship, and the nurse should be aware of the developmental history as well as the medical history of the kid. The nurse should know, obviously, if there's allergies, but the developmental history is an important thing. The nurse needs to know if you have a learning disabled child. The nurse needs to know if you have a child who doesn't talk. The nurse needs to know if you have a child who is hyperactive. The nurse needs to know all kinds of these things. So you need to focus on these things as a nurse for the incoming child. You need to focus on family relationships and support systems. You want to know who the kid relates to the best, because that's who you're going to pull in harder for the education. You want to know the cultural needs and how they can affect the care and hospital routine. You want to know nicknames. I call my kid Boogs because when she was a little baby, she was full of boogers. She's Boogs. So you want to know the nicknames. You want to know, again, developmental levels and abilities, communication skills, personality, adaptability, coping skills. You want to know if this kid is like a high-strung kind of kid. And as a nurse, you're going to be able to tell by looking at the parents, for the most part, how this kid is going to be. Because however the parents are, that's how the kid's going to be. Especially the younger they are, the more they're going to be like that when they're in that verbal communication level. Past experiences, you're going to want to know siblings. If there's a divorce in the family, that actually plays a big part in it. Previous separation experiences, vacations, if the kid was ever sent to camp and didn't want to go, that kind of shit. Impact of current health problem on growth and development. Obviously, if the kid is diabetic, there's going to be a big issue there for that kid. And you want to know what the parents have taught the kid, and previous contact with healthcare personnel. So those are all things that you're going to want to know for developmental history. And then you develop a pediatric nursing care plan. And the care plan is a result of the nursing process, and it states specifically what is to be done for each child, and keeps the focus on the child, not on the condition, not on the therapy. It's always on the child. You focus on that kid. That kid is your life. That kid is your job. The disease, the injury, the affliction, that shit's all secondary, because doctors diagnose and nurses heal patients. That's just how it works, right? I think we all know that at this point in nursing school. So, plays an important part of a nursing care plan as you can for children. And the achievement of developmental tasks should be part of the plan of care for the hospitalized child. So, if you have that kid who's in school and now that kid is out of school and the kid has spelling tests coming up, you want to kind of take part in helping that kid reach those goals. You want to maintain as much normalcy as possible. We have that clinical pathway. It's the interdisciplinary plan. That's clinical pathway. Vocabulary word. Clinical pathway, interdisciplinary plan. Right? Everybody's seen IDC notes. IDC. I don't care. IDC, interdisciplinary care. So it's everybody. It's the LPNs. It's the CNAs. It's the doctors. It's the whole staff. It's the whole floor. That's how it goes. Clinical pathway focuses on the broader view of the entire multidisciplinary healthcare team and general outcome goals of care within specific timelines. And in specific timelines, that's where you as an LPN focus on goals, right? You get your short-term goals, 7 to 10 days. You got your long-term goals, which are anywhere after that. Right? Right. Okay. So now we meet the needs of the hospitalized child. It's frustrating as shit for infants. Can you communicate with an infant? Can an infant communicate with you? No, they can't. They're frustrated as hell. And they're away from mom. Separation anxiety. That's a big thing, right? Infants are used to getting what they want to have when they want it, and they want it yesterday, and it should have been there the day before. That's how infants are. That's that comfort zone. They're way out of their comfort zone. The further away mommy or daddy are from the infant, the farther out of their comfort zone they are. So you have to make sure that you can do everything you can to make sure that that infant is still in the comfort zone. Involve the parents, involve the parents, involve the parents. Right? Right. You want to protect them from excess frustration? Obviously. Now, hospitals all have visiting hours. When it comes to infants and peds, you want to be a little bit liberal with that. You don't want to be there going, "It is 6:02, you must leave now, you get out, the visiting hours are over." Dude, you can stay till 8 o'clock if you want, daddy, it's cool. Your kid needs you, I need you to be there for your kid, it's cool. So now, nursing goals in the care of hospitalized toddlers. You want to reassure the parents, particularly the child's primary caregiver. So that could be mommy in some cases, that could be daddy in some cases. You want to maintain the toddler's sense of trust, and that's what we've been going over all this time. You want to communicate as much as you can on the level that they understand. You want to incorporate home habits of the child in nursing care plans, like transitional objects, right? And a transitional object would be a blanket, a favorite teddy bear, even something as stupid as a favorite TV show nowadays. I mean, let's face it, kids are all about the boob tube and the electronic babysitter, so that has actually become a transitional object at this point. You want to allow the child to work through or master threatening experiences through soothing techniques and play. So that's kind of letting them talk through it, letting them work through it. And you want to provide individualized, flexible nursing care plans in accordance with the child's development and diagnosis. Because if you have a child with an IQ of 38 versus a child with an IQ of 82, you're obviously going to have a little bit of a different plan. So you got to kind of deal with that. And again, going on, rooming in is highly desirable. Rooming in. Rooming in. Highly desirable. Involve the parents, involve the parents, involve the parents. Right? Right. Now, when it comes to a kid who may end up having something like a PICC line or an IV, you've got that natural reaction that we as adults have to take that shit out because that doesn't belong and I don't like it and it feels weird when I bend my arm. Sometimes you have to restrain. It's a fact of life. You have to restrain with adults, you have to restrain with kids. When you have to restrain, the big thing is you have to explain. Explain. Involve the parents, involve the parents, involve the parents. Right? When restraint's required, it must be accompanied by increased emotional support, such as rooming in, involve the parents, and additional attention from nurses and suitable diversion. Again, just kind of goes back with transitional objects. You've got to soothe, you've got to distract, you've got to reward for soldiering up, that kind of thing. Toddlers are always going to have separation anxiety. The more they can understand, the more they can be prepared for the hospital. So again, language. Right? In procedures, the nurse should always remember to use non-threatening words. Because as a little kid, if somebody says, I'm going to take your teddy bear, I'm going to take your temperature, I'm going to take your birthday, it doesn't matter, you're taking. And as a toddler, if you're taking anything, you're relieving me of something that's mine. That's mine. You can't take anything, right? So for temperature, you would say, I'm going to check your temperature, right? Instead of a shot, you're going to say medicine under the skin. Medicine under the skin. A shot is medicine under the skin. An incision is a special opening, like if you have to lance something on the kid, right? If you have to put to sleep, you have to knock the kid out, it's a special sleep. We're not going to say we're going to give you anesthesia. We're not going to say we're going to knock you out. We're going to say we're going to put you to a special sleep. Special sleep, right? If you have electrodes, if the kid is an MI patient, it's a cardio patient, we're not going to put electrodes on anything. We're going to put special stickers on the kid. An X-ray is a special picture. A gurney or a stretcher is a rolling bed because it's wheels and it's fun and it's rolling. Whee, we're rolling, right? A catheter is going to be a tube. Obviously, every single kid is going to realize that this sucks afterwards, but the bottom line is you got to kind of prepare them. You got to kind of soften the blow a little bit. And they're going to realize that it sucks afterwards, and that's why you involve the parents, and you reward, right? So, when we get further on, you get preschool children, school-age children. At this point, they're afraid of bodily harm, especially invasive procedures. So, again, comfort. Again, reward. You can sketch a body outline on a piece of paper, make a cartoon body, and you can point to the parts of the body that the procedure is going to have to go to. You're going to have children who ask questions. Every kid who is capable of asking a question is going to fucking ask. They're always going to ask. Because every kid loves that three-letter word, why? And yeah, you answer the questions. You answer the questions on a level that kid can understand. And you make sure that there's no misinterpretations. You don't sugarcoat. You don't bullshit. You answer honestly in a language they can understand. Right? Right. Now you got to remember that observation of nonverbal cues such as facial grimaces, squirming about, finger tapping is important in determining the need for pain relief and support for the child. Because even kids, even toddlers who can communicate may not necessarily intentionally communicate how they're feeling. Right? Right. Now, we get on to the adolescent. When feelings of independence, self-assertion, and identity are threatened, the adolescent may respond by withdrawal, noncompliance, or anger. And holy shit, who doesn't know an angry teenager? I got one. Gotta do everything I can. Can't change it. Angry, pissed off teenager. That's just how they roll, dude. So you got to separate adolescence. You've got early adolescence, and then you've got middle adolescence. Actually, you've got late adolescence, right? So early adolescence, you have intense relationships with members of one's own sex. So we're looking at this point, in this day and age, we're looking at 10 years old. I hate to even admit that, but it's 10 years old is early adolescence at this point, right? So they have intense relationships with members of their own sex. They're just getting big on maintaining privacy, and same-sex room assignments are a good idea at this point, right? You got a little boy, 10-year-old, 12-year-old boy, put him with another 10, 12-year-old boy. Girl, same thing. So then you got middle adolescence. At this point, we're talking 14 to 16 years of age. At this point, they're anxious about their ability to appeal to the opposite sex and meet gender role expectations. Because I'm sexy. And you in 8th grade need to know that, right? So it's always about impressing the opposite sex at this point. So there's a little bit more insecurity going on. As opposed to early adolescence, where it's just like it's all about titty committee. At this point, now it's exploratory, and it gets a little crazy. And this is where the hormones really go insane. But at this point, we're looking at dealing with a big struggle for independence, for emancipation. Any 13-year-old on the planet will tell you, I want to move out now and get away from my family because they're stupid and I know everything. Holy shit, go ahead and go. Well, you still know everything. It's cool. So then you got late adolescence, right? 17 to 21 years of age. At this point, it's all about trying to get laid. Is it? Is it? It is. Right. So now they're worrying about education. They're worrying about career, marriage, children, community. We're looking at early adulthood at this point. And if it's guys, it's all about trying to get laid. Let's be honest. I know it. You know it. We all know it. It's just how it rolls. So then we have the adjustment to illness phase, right? Adolescents can understand implications of their disease both in the present and in the future, and they are capable of participating in decisions related to treatment and care. Now, here's where we get into a little bit of the, well, okay, I'm listening. When you have an adolescent who says, don't tell my mom about this. Well, a couple of things you got to look at is you got to look at your state laws, first off. Second off, you've got to look at morals. You've got to look at ethical dilemmas. Here in New Jersey, if a minor is telling you something about they don't want their parent to know, when it comes to certain things, laws are in the works where you don't have to tell mom and dad. But at this point, it's still, if you're under 18, guess what? Mom and dad know because they're responsible. So, again, check with your state laws and make sure you know that shit, because that's the difference between you and your license, right? Right. Other thing about teenagers is they're young, dumb, and full of cum. They're immortal. And the last thing a teenager will ever deal with is being set next to a senile patient, to a 90-year-old in the same room. So you want to kind of, again, go with the same age group when it comes to dealing with late adolescence. You got to respect the confidentiality of the children as much as you can, again, going with what I said before. Now, if we get into the emancipated minor is a little bit different. This refers to an adolescent who is younger than 18 years old, right? But they're no longer under the parent's authority. We're talking about maybe a married minor, a minor who is in the military, or a minor who is about to give birth, who's a parent, right? Because you got, God knows, you got MTV, 16 and Pregnant, or whatever the frig that white trash show is. You got all kinds of shit like that. Again, look up the laws, make sure you're familiar with the laws in your state, because in every state it's different. New Jersey doesn't recognize emancipation in every single case, so pay attention to that. Right? Now we get into discharge. Discharge planning starts on the day of admission. That's something you learn Nursing 101 first day, Funds 1, 101. That's it. Nursing preparation for discharge starts on day 1. Starts on the day of admission. That's the way it always works. Now, on discharge, you want to make sure that you have instructions that are written so that they can be referred to as needed. You want to make sure that they're understandable. You want to make sure that you explain them, again, in a language that the patient can understand. It doesn't matter how old they are, right? You always want to make sure that the patient understands. If the patient has a parent, if the patient is not emancipated, they're not considered an adult, you want to make sure that the parent understands. And you want to do a feedback on that. You want to make sure that the parent can listen to that information, interpret it, and give it back to you in a way that they understand it and the way they make it understandable, right? Right. So now, we can have behavioral problems after hospitalization. Severe stress can be obvious during the patient's stay, but sometimes it's not so obvious after they leave. And we would think that once you're out of the hospital, you're good to go, you're golden, you're fine. But sometimes that stress kind of stays, especially depending on what the illness is or the treatment is. So you've got to anticipate behaviors such as clinging, regression in bowel and bladder, aggression, manipulation, and nightmares. You want to allow the child to become a participating family member as soon as possible. You want to get that kid back into their own regimen, basically. Allow time for free play. Listen and clarify misconceptions about the illness. You want to make sure that you're communicating. Involve the parents, involve the parents, involve the parents. And the parents want to involve the kid, involve the kid, involve the kid. And we all want to do that as much as we can, right? So now, when the patient is leaving, we've got documentation. Documentation is extremely important, especially in peds. Documentation includes when and with whom the child departed, the patient's behavior, whether it was smiling, alert, crying, and so on, method of transportation from the facility. If the kid pulled out in a fucking cab, that's a little bit of a problem, and you're going to want to notate that, right? The patient's weight at the time of discharge, any instructions and medicines given to the child or the parents. So again, document, document, document. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen, right? Right. Excuse me. Sorry, I smacked my black dildo. So, discharge documentation is very, very important. So now we get into home care. Home care can be a little bit more of a struggle. It's more commonly known for the nursing students where you're dealing with elderly patients. A lot of LPNs coming out of the box are going to the home health care companies, and they're dealing with patients in their 90s who are home instead of in homes. And the one thing that you deal with on a regular basis is family members who are going, fuck, I'm so glad you're here, dude. It's fucking killing me. I gotta go take a nap. I gotta take a shower. I gotta take a dump. Oh, I just need a month off. And that's what you're here for. And that's what the home care nurses are for. It's called respite care. And respite care is basically where you give family members a break. The family members can go out, they can run errands, they can get rest, they can do what they want to do. They can be human for a little while. They can get back to their lives for a little while. You have family members in all ages of levels, from teenagers who are taking care of grandparents to parents in their 30s who are taking care of grandparents who are also taking care of kids. You've got the grandparents who are taking care of great-grandparents, and on and on and on. It's all over the place. Respite care is a huge thing, and I'm speaking from personal experience on that one, no lie. So, when you show up for your respite care, if you are the nurse and you're showing up, there's a few things that you want to do. You want to observe how the parents are interacting with the child or the patient. We're going to just say patient instead of child at this point. You're going to observe facial expressions and body language. You're going to post signs above the bed denoting special considerations such as never position on left side, don't feed with a plastic spoon, that type of stuff. You're going to listen to the caretakers and observe how they attend to the physical needs of the patient. You're going to ask questions and discuss apprehensions that the caregivers might have about the ability to care for the patient, that kind of stuff. You want to basically just take a good look at how the caregivers are interacting with that patient, and more importantly, you want to take a look at how that patient is responding to the caregivers, because just like any household, just like any family, just like any situation what you see as a visitor is like an iceberg. You see the top 10%, and then there's that other 90% under there that you will never see, but you need to learn how to read that top 10%. And when you read that top 10%, you're going to know what's going on underneath there. And that's basically it. At this point, that's chapter 21 in maternity and ped nursing. And my name is Rail. And thank you for joining me, and I'll see you for chapter 22.